A Map of Thought, Episode 26, Marshall McLuhan. Here is a claim that sounds almost backwards the first time you hear it, and it is worth sitting with before we explain it. The format carrying a message can matter more than what the message actually says. Marshall McLuhan built an entire way of understanding media around that single idea, decades before the internet existed. And if you have ever wondered why political debate feels so different on a 15-second video than it does in a long newspaper column, you are already living inside his argument.
Let us start with his most famous line then, since you have already gestured at it. The medium is the message. What does that actually mean, precisely?
People usually assume communication works like this. Someone has an idea, they choose a format to deliver it, television, radio, print, and the format is just a neutral pipe the idea travels through unchanged. McLuhan's whole career was an argument against that assumption. He claimed the format itself, independent of whatever specific content it happens to be carrying, reshapes how people think, relate to each other, and organize their societies, often far more profoundly than the actual content does. Take television, the medium McLuhan spent much of his career analyzing. He argued that television did not simply deliver news and entertainment into people's living rooms. It restructured how people experienced time, community, and even their own attention span, regardless of whether a given broadcast was a serious documentary or a game show. The medium itself was doing the deep structural work. The specific content riding on top of it was almost secondary.
He also had a specific way of sorting different media from each other, did not he? Hot and cool.
Right, and it is one of his stranger, more debated distinctions, but genuinely useful once you translate it. A hot medium in his vocabulary delivers a lot of dense, high-definition information and demands relatively little active participation from the audience to fill in gaps. He considered radio and film hot, in this specific technical sense, because they hand you a complete, richly detailed sensory experience. A cool medium delivers less information directly and requires the audience to actively participate, fill in blanks, and complete the picture themselves. He considered television, at least in its earlier, lower resolution form, cool, along with something like a phone call, where you are actively constructing meaning from a comparatively sparse signal. Whether you accept his exact categories or not, the underlying insight holds up well. Different formats demand fundamentally different levels of active mental participation from their audience, and that difference shapes engagement every bit as much as the actual content does. A dense written thread you have to read carefully and interpret is a cooler medium than a slickly produced video that hands you a finished emotional experience with nothing left for you to fill in yourself.
Give us the historical example he leaned on most heavily, because I know he loved reaching back centuries for this argument.
The printing press, and it is a genuinely powerful case. Before Gutenberg's press in the mid-15th century, information moved slowly, through hand-copied manuscripts, and most people experienced knowledge and religious authority as something delivered orally, communally, through a priest or a local authority interpreting texts on their behalf. The printing press did not just make books cheaper. It restructured European society at a level far deeper than the specific content of any one printed page. Once the Bible could be mass-printed and translated into local vernacular languages, ordinary people could read Scripture directly, without a priest mediating the interpretation for them. That single shift in medium helped fuel the Protestant Reformation, since it suddenly became structurally possible for individuals to challenge official religious interpretation using the same text religious authorities claimed to represent. And because printing standardized specific regional dialects into fixed, widely distributed written languages, it also helped create the modern sense of a shared national language and identity, laying groundwork for the rise of modern nationalism centuries later. None of that came from any single book's specific content. It came from what the format of mass-produced, standardized print made structurally possible for the first time.
That is a remarkable claim to hang on a purely technical shift in how books got produced.
It is, and it is worth being honest that McLuhan's writing style itself was strange enough that his own contemporaries were deeply divided on whether he was a genius or a showman. He wrote in dense, aphoristic bursts, deliberately playful and often genuinely confusing, more like a series of provocations than a conventional academic argument. Serious critics accused him of overreaching wildly, of building sweeping historical theories on thin evidence, of prioritizing a catchy phrase over careful proof. And yet decades later, plenty of his specific predictions about electronic media reshaping human consciousness and connecting the entire planet into what he called a global village read as startlingly prescient, written years before anything resembling the actual internet existed. His reputation has genuinely swung back and forth across the decades, dismissed as a fad in some periods, rediscovered as a prophet in others.
Let us bring this down to something genuinely ordinary, because global village and structural reshaping can feel abstract fast.
Think about delivering the exact same difficult message, say, telling someone you disagree with a decision they made, through three different formats. As a text message, stripped of tone, facial expression, and pacing, the exact same words can land as cold, even hostile, regardless of how you actually meant them. As a phone call, the same words carry tone and timing, softening or sharpening the message in ways text simply cannot. Face to face, the same words again carry all of that plus posture, eye contact, and the ability to immediately repair a misunderstanding the moment you see it registering on the other person's face. The content, the actual disagreement you are expressing, can be nearly identical in all three cases. The medium changes the entire experience of receiving it. That is McLuhan's whole argument, compressed into a single ordinary, everyday choice everyone listening has actually made this week.
Where does this land in the world right now? Because I suspect this is one of the more directly relevant thinkers in the entire series for anyone paying attention to current politics.
Directly and urgently. Compare a 15-second political video built for a short-form platform to a 5,000-word newspaper editorial covering the exact same policy issue. McLuhan's framework says the difference between those two is not just length. It is a genuinely different way of organizing thought itself. Short-form video rewards emotional immediacy, sharp visual contrast, and a message compressed into something instantly graspable without context. Long-form writing rewards sustained argument, nuance, and the patience to hold multiple qualifications in mind at once. A political claim that would sound absurdly oversimplified stretched across 5,000 words of careful prose can feel completely persuasive compressed into 15 seconds of confident delivery, not because the underlying facts changed, but because the medium itself rewards a fundamentally different kind of reasoning. This connects to a genuinely live, ongoing debate about whether the rise of short-form video is reshaping attention spans and political discourse at a structural level, independent of which specific political side is using the format more effectively at any given moment. Some researchers argue the format itself is measurably shortening people's tolerance for sustained, complex argument, regardless of content. Others argue this concern echoes almost every previous moral panic about a new medium: radio supposedly rotting attention spans in the 1920s, television supposedly doing the same in the 1950s, and caution against assuming this particular format is uniquely corrosive just because it happens to be the one reshaping the current moment. McLuhan himself would likely find that argument almost quaint. His entire point was that every major new medium reshapes human cognition and social organization, not as a moral failing, but as a structural fact worth taking seriously each time it happens again.
So, what is the one habit someone should actually take from this the next time they consume the news?
Notice the format before you evaluate the content. Ask yourself honestly whether you are being persuaded by the actual strength of an argument, or by the sheer structural power of the medium delivering it, the pacing, the visual rhythm, the emotional compression that a 15-second format is specifically engineered to produce. That single habit, separating the medium's effect from the message's actual merit, is the most durable, practical thing McLuhan left behind, and it has arguably never mattered more than it does right now. Next time, we follow this thread of media and connection outward, from the format of a single message to the entire structure of a networked society. We meet Manuel Castells, who mapped how modern networks, financial, political, and digital, have reorganized power itself around connection and flow, rather than around fixed places and traditional hierarchies.
See you then.